let's talk a little bit about hunting on the ground, and I don't mean ground blinds necessarily, or pop-up blinds or any of that, but actually being on the ground and walking in hunting, or finding a spot without building a blind, and how if that can be effective for hunting, and some of the things you need to watch out for and other things that you don't. Some people, I guess, don't really understand or can't understand why or how I've been successful basically walking through the woods, finding a spot that I like, and just standing there, and then deer come by and I shoot them. Because it does sound like the impossible task, because whitetail are so observant to their surroundings. Not only are they using their eyes and their ears, but they use their nose, and they know where you've been, and it's at times it almost seems like they can tell where you're going, and they're just so in tune to their environment that it's hard to fool them. But one thing that we need to keep in mind, and this is one of my special little tricks, is especially deer that have been hunted a lot, like public land or private land that's just seen a lot of hunters, or people that have hunted them on neighboring properties, that kind of thing. Deer get accustomed to looking at danger in particular areas. You go on public land a lot of times, and everybody wants to use a climber tree stand and a compound bow and shoot. Far so deer kind of get this idea that, okay, well, we avoid the big clearings, and every time we walk by a tree, if we're suspicious, we look up in it. I mean, if you've done any amount of hunting on places where deer are pressured, you've seen deer stop, look at the base of a tree, and look all the way up it, and then they'll go to the next one, and they look all the way up. And it's amazing how they can bust you. They know to look for danger up in the trees. And the same thing with ground blinds. I mean, you couldn't take a pop-up blind and put it in front of deer that are pressured and expect them to walk by and not notice this big tent just because it's camouflage, or to ignore it because it doesn't look like a person. But one thing that you can do by staying on the ground and hunting basically just as yourself, you can kind of fool the deer's need or want to look for danger in particular areas by looking like something different. And some people use ghillie suits and that kind of thing that helps hide them. And I actually like the idea of a ghillie suit. I would love to use one, but it's not really primitive in nature. So I'm hunting with a primitive bow. I don't want to use a modern ghillie suit. It just doesn't really fit what I'm trying to recreate. I like the idea of them. In fact, I've thought about making my own primitive ghillie suit out of like Spanish moss and stuff, and I still may do that. I think native peoples could have easily done that. The thing that worries me is how many ticks and chiggers are just going to be attracted to this thing that's draped over my body that is such a nice little warm spot to nestle up. That's the part that I don't like about it. Otherwise I would do it. But when I go into the woods and I'm still hunting, and it's funny that they call it still hunting. You'd think that still hunting would be sitting in a tree stand, which it kind of is too, but, and I say still hunting, I mean basically walking very, very slow and finding a spot that I like, standing there for a while. And if I do happen to get bored or whatever, not liking the area anymore, I can move, and I might cover 100 yards in an hour or so. And sometimes that's good, sometimes it's bad, because often, sometimes what happens if you don't really know the good places to stop, you might have moved on and then a deer will come right behind you. You're like, man, I should have stayed right there. I would have got a shot at one. But that's the risk that you take. But for me, what I like to do when I still hunt, it's not like a random thing. It's because I'm going somewhere and I know the deer are in the area, but it's not something that I've scouted enough to say, well, I'm going to put a tree stand here or a ground blind, or like on public land where I don't want to leave something for somebody to come take. So if I put a tree stand up, not only the deer probably going to look for it, but anybody that finds it's going to take it. And I'm not going to pack a climber with me because, again, that's not really primitive either. And I hate carrying stuff. I really do. And I could build a ground blind, but you run the risk in public land that somebody else is going to be in it hunting, or they're going to come in wanting to hunt the same area, wanting to get rid of you, and they'll break it apart, knock it down, because that's, public, grounds for you. But one of the things that I like to do is when I find that area that I want to hunt, I walk in and just find a nice little pinch point somewhere that I feel that, are a good, well-used trail, something that tells me that my chances are better if I hunt this spot. And then I take notice of where the wind's going, where the deer should be coming from, and I make sure I align myself so the wind is going to be in my favor when the deer come down the trail. Or if you had a stand or a blind or something, you can't necessarily do that. You can't always follow the wind when you have a predetermined spot set up, But this way I can walk, find a tree, and I stand next to it, or sometimes I stand behind it depending on what the cover is. And see, I don't even wear camouflage when I hunt. I'm kind of against the modern camouflage because, again, it doesn't really fit the thing that I'm trying to recreate. So I'm wearing just drab colors, browns and stuff, basically to mimic what primitive man would have worn with his skins. And sometimes I do wear my skins out hunting. It depends where I'm hunting, because I am a little worried about getting shot. So if I hunt on public land, I wear like a red shirt, something that'll still hide me from the deer, and it's a solid color, maybe have some blotches on it or something, but I don't necessarily look brown like a deer where somebody's gonna shoot me. And I'm doing this without modern camouflage at all, and I'm walking and I'm finding a spot that I like, and I just stand still. I get an arrow on the string and I stand at the ready and I wait, and when I can hear the deer coming, it's just important that you just stay still. When you hear them coming, you pick up your bow and you just wait, and you just be very patient. Know that when they come out, they may see you, but there's a good chance that if they haven't caught any wind of you and you're not moving, you're not shaking and freaking out, which is difficult if you're just getting started at it, because it's very exciting. I still get excited sometimes, but it's amazing how deer will actually walk right by you when they're used to looking for specific things to be scared of. They're used to looking for tree stands and that kind of thing. And when they don't see that, they get comfortable, and you can actually fool them and get that advantage by trying to hunt the old ways that nobody wants to do anymore. One way that I killed a deer last year in Ohio was I hunted a friend's place, and he had ground blinds built, out of just natural materials. And I hunted these ground blinds, and I wasn't having any luck. I seen some deer behind me the one day, and I just decided the last day, I said, hey, do you care if I walk around? He says, no. So I walked on up the hill and found a great spot between a bluff and some blown down trees that I knew was going to force those deer there, and there was no blind, no tree stand. And I just stood against a maple tree that was, about this big around him. It was pretty big. And I just stood there, just real still. I was wearing a green plaid shirt, and the little buck come walking right by. He walked within 11 yards, and I had my bow up and just kept following him. And when he got it about 11 yards and was broadside, I let him have it. And he never ever saw me. He just wasn't expecting to see somebody standing there. It's not saying that you can just stand out in the open and the deer's not going to see it. There was a lot of trees in between us and whatnot, but I was able to pick a shot in between it, But if it is really wide open and I like a spot, I'll stand behind a tree and I'll just keep looking. I won't stand like right up close to it, but I'll stand, a couple of feet behind it where I can maneuver, and I'm not going to hit that tree. But I'll keep that tree in between us, and actually as the deer's coming, when it's not looking my direction or paying attention, I'll shift my body around so I'm constantly directly behind that tree. And then when the deer gets all the way past me and he's actually broadside and I'm still behind the tree, now I'm shooting at him quartering away. So of course when I get there, if there's a lot of leaf litter or whatever, I'll go ahead and just scrape that out real quick. Deer are used to hearing that kind of thing. When there's squirrels and armadillos and coons and stuff around that are shuffling leaves, you can basically walk up, find a spot you want, kick the leaves out, and chances are you're not going to disturb them anyway. But having that quiet area to move around the back of the tree helps. So you see these deer coming, and you just keep that tree in between you the whole time as you can. You don't want to move when they're kind of looking your way, but you can kind of tell. You get used to it. They'll start looking off to the side, or their head will go behind a tree, and you get that with experience. You get confidence that they're not going to see you, but you're also willing to take that risk that they're going to see you because you know that you want to remain hidden. And I've had deer come in just wide open areas, have come right by me because I've had my outline broke up by a tree. And it's not to say that they couldn't see my shoulders or my legs or something. I'm not standing behind the tree like this trying to hide from them, but I don't look like a person sitting there. It just looks like a tree that maybe has some branches down low, or or just anything, or just a bush behind it. But hunting in a new area like that all the time, like I said, that it keeps the deer from expecting to see you in a tree stand or in a ground blind or something big that grabs their attention that they're not used to seeing in their territory. But by doing that type of hunting, you can hunt a new spot basically every day or every hunt, or maybe even get 2 or 3 spots throughout the day. You can just kind of move. So as your scent accumulates in this area, and now any deer that have come by when you're not there smell, and now they know where to look for you, you can completely move and go 50 yards further down a trail and try it somewhere else, and get these deer to where they've already passed the area that they're on high alert, or you haven't even come to it yet. But that's kind of the advantages of hunting on the ground. In some ways that you might be able to get out and hunt an area that doesn't even have trees for a tree stand or even sufficient cover for a ground blind. There was a creek bottom in Montana that I hunted that had a lot of deer sign in it, where they cross the creek and go into the alfalfa field in the evening, and there was not a tree to be found to put a tree stand in. Like, the biggest tree out there was the size of a baseball bat, and nobody ever hunted it because it was basically just low grassland, a couple very small chokecherry bushes, and these tiny little trees. So you couldn't put a blind there that the deer wouldn't see it. In those public lands, you couldn't leave something there, and you can't put a tree stand there. So most people, they never hunted it. I hunted it all season long and never saw a single person hunting this spot. And I simply, at one point, I stood in the creek and waited for them to cross the creek. They couldn't see me over the bank. I just stood up against the bank. And then later on, I started going up and actually standing right in front or right behind a chokecherry bush. And I just stood still. And although it didn't have any leaves on it, all those sticks were just enough to kind of break up my outline enough that I could stand. And I did the same thing. If they decided to come down this way, I'd shift around this side of the chokecherry bush. And sometimes they would come down this side, and I could shift around this way. And then when they would finally get past me, because a lot of times these deer are coming at you, and you don't want to shoot them in the chest, or quartering towards you, and that is difficult with hunting on the ground, because you need the deer to come. You don't want to come straight to you, but they need to come off to the side, and you have to have restraint. I don't want to shoot while they're quartering tooth me. And you got to actually let them get all the way broadside before you can take a shot. And that raises another good thing to talk about with hunting on the ground, or hunting in general with deer as they come by you. Deer tend to look they can see really well all the way behind them, but their concentration is out in front of them at angles like this, and kind of to the side and to the front. And it's not saying that if you moved or something behind them, they couldn't see you. But typically, as a deer's walking, it's looking for danger, and it's listening for danger. Its ears pointing this way, its eyes are pointing this way, and it's being attentive to its surroundings. Once it has deemed this area clear and has passed it, its attention is now up here. It's not back here. So when that deer has actually finally gotten all the way past you and you haven't been seen, and you're just holding tight, you don't move, you don't pick your bow up, you just hold still. When it finally gets past you, it's actually looking out past you, and it's quartering away. Now it's giving you a good shot opportunity, and it's not really paying attention to where you're at. So you can actually move slow, and the deer won't even see you because he's concentrating on being up there. But see, those are some of the advantages of hunting on the ground, and some of the experiences you can get when you go do it. You can full deer that are used to looking for tree stands, or used to looking for ground blinds and that kind of thing. And I don't look at it as a disadvantage not to have a particular spot picked out. If I have a big enough piece of land that I can walk around without blowing it out, in one day or one afternoon, then I love to be on the ground, because I can hunt a new spot all the time. And oftentimes I'm seeing new deer and different things. And you're always going to have that problem of deer coming by at a trail too far away. I mean, even if you put up a ground blind or a tree stand, deer could always come a different way. But you keep that in mind too, and you say, well, I saw the deer cross, up there. The next time, or even this time, once the deer's past you, there might be more coming. You scoot up and find a good spot, and you hunt that trail. Find where they're crossing, or you come back the next day or 2 days later, or whenever, maybe your scent's dispersed, you get back in there and you hunt that spot again. And, without having to move tree stands and being noisy and that kind of thing, you can just kind of wander up, find a spot, and just be still and be patient. The deer will come by you and you can get some shots. I'm not saying you're never going to get busted, because you will, but that's all part of hunting. You can't have success or enjoy success without some disappointment.